Welcome to Atheist Witch, a podcast for witches or any curious minds to learn more about a non-theistic approach to witchcraft. I'm sharing my journey as I find my way between actively practicing witchcraft and navigating a non-theistic viewpoint. I will review some basic foundational concepts, but this is not intended as a podcast for brand new witches. I will never present my or others' opinion as fact, and any positions represented in this podcast will be referenced accordingly. Please keep in mind that just like yours, my practice is ever evolving, and my stance may change over the course of this podcast. I'm always happy to discuss this or answer any questions. Please reach out to me on social media or email. Welcome to the first episode of the Atheist Witch podcast. I'm going to take the time today to introduce myself, the Atheist Witch, some of my traditions, and how my practice has evolved throughout my life, touch points with other religions, the tenets that I believe in, and how to keep an open mind. Also, I hope to establish why should you listen to me. So, who am I? Well, I believe an atheist witch represents my non-belief in any sort of deity, especially those who are human-like and sort of invented by those who came before us. I am a practicing witch. I have an active practice, which includes the observation of the Sabbats, moon cycles. I do shadow work, rituals, spells, etc. A lot of my traditions stem from Northern European traditions, mainly Celtic, Scottish, and Irish. It's mainly due to my heritage, my family culture, and upbringing, although I do have a lot of interest and a strong influence from Hinduism and the ancient traditions of the Indus Valley. We'll talk more about that religious evolution between the Indus Valley and specifically Celtic traditions in later episodes. My practice has evolved pretty considerably over my lifetime, like many witches. My very first memory of witchcraft was praying, sitting under a table and praying to some entity that I thought of as the mother. That's when I lived in the mountains of Colorado when I was just a child. I also grew up in an alternative culture and often reached out to marginalized friend groups. I was the token goth in high school, and so I grew up in alternative culture, and so that created a pretty welcoming place for my witchcraft to grow. Most of my life I've developed a solo practice, although I did spend many years from college and beyond with a coven in Long Beach, California. Gradually, as I've grown older, I've shifted into what I would label as green witchcraft, and this is a shift away from a lot of high ritual and structure that I had in previous practice. I did, over my lifetime, encounter other religions and make attempts at belief in a number of organized religions, including Christianity, Wicca, and Buddhism. In this podcast, I'll discuss a lot of my personal viewpoints and UPG, or unverified personal gnosis. I plan to expand on that into what is accepted gnosis, research, and the viewpoints of others in future episodes. So, what do I believe? Well, the closest label that I've ever found for myself is a scientific pantheist. Tenets of pantheism include a deep reverence for the natural world, freedom of and from religion, naturalism without belief in supernatural beings, a respect for science, reason, and evidence, and practical realism, that the world exists apart from human perception. Trees fall in the forest and they do make a sound, even if we're not there to hear it. So a good resource for learning more about pantheism is the World Pantheist Movement. I encourage you to get on the Google and check that out. So when we're talking about science and research, what am I talking about in relation to witchcraft, and how does that fit into my belief system? I have a pretty clear focus on neuroscience and waveforms like energy and sound. In in any witchcraft practice or a lot of the adjacent belief systems, you'll hear a lot of buzzwords like vibration and energy. These terms are way more interesting if you dive in deeper than the typical love and light. No shade on that, but I like to dive into who we are. We are biology. Biology is chemistry, and chemistry is just teeny tiny physics. So when I'm thinking about the way that the universe works, and in physics, an interesting point of reference as well is the electric universe theory, which is a different universal theory from the standard model of particle physics. And this includes quantum theory and string theory. So we'll talk about more in future episodes and why quantum mechanics or quantum theory has anything to do with witchcraft. So my own assumptions about the universe and the world around me are based on what I feel, what I observe, and what I learn. My tenets, or the beliefs that are the most core to my practice, a lot of these come from a book called Green Witchcraft, which really resonated with me, but I've adapted these based on my understanding into guidelines for my own life. The tree of life is a really meaningful symbol to me. So the way that I describe my tenets is as the branches of the tree, or the branches of my personal practice. The first is harmony. And harmony is a balance between all of the other branches, between humanity and nature, within and without oneself, between persons, and within the community. The second is health. This is physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual equilibrium of the person and the environment. Love. It's about positive and balanced relationships, having love for others even when that might be challenging. Happiness. Joy, contentment, rejoicing, celebration of self, others, and the natural world. Peace. Serenity, a tranquil outlook, and a calm environment, and absence of aggression. Next is abundance, which is prosperity, fertility, and seeing to the needs of myself and others. I want to note here that fertility doesn't necessarily mean baby making. That fertility can mean a lot of things. A fertile mind, a fertile field. Fertility really extends into a lot of different places in our lives. The next tenet or branch is protection, which is ensuring the well-being and safeguarding those people and things that are the most precious to me. And last but not least is wisdom, understanding that life is learning, knowledge, and enlightenment. So another important thing here is keeping an open mind, or in corporate speak, we would say having a growth mindset. So what is keeping an open mind? Sometimes in my life, I've had to embrace the woo-woo and just see what happens, to go along and make some observations and set some theories and test them, but to keep all possibilities available to me until I've settled into what I see and feel and learn about a situation. Sometimes this means that the concept of discretion becomes really, really important. The concept of discretion will come up repeatedly in this podcast in a lot of different contexts, but the most important thing about discretion is taking a measured approach to what you see and observe, and then checking it with your realistic mind and balancing that between keeping an open mind versus what you know is true for you. So that seems a little nebulous right now, but we'll talk about discretion a lot. So why would you listen to me? Well, I hope that you share my vision for this podcast. The vision here is to grow and change and share that journey, explore concepts from what I've learned is a little bit of an unusual viewpoint as an atheist witch. I hope that we will challenge assumptions and find some similarities in the way that we make our way in this incredible world that we're inhabiting. So I take a less common approach to witchcraft. I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers, but my hope for this podcast is open discourse. As I've said, and I will continue to say, I welcome questions and commentary from any listeners who would like to engage with me in this. I know that we'll be covering a variety of topics, and sometimes the topics or the subject matter will veer far away from witchcraft, or it might feel that way, but we'll always bring it back to center in talking about a witchcraft practice and what that means for the individual. So I hope this episode has given you a good idea of who I am, some of what my beliefs are, and what to expect from the podcast going forward. I do plan to post episodes on a bi-weekly basis, so I'll stop this episode here, and I hope to see you at episode 2. The best way to support this podcast is to please like, subscribe, or leave a review. Follow or message me on Insta at @anatheistwitch, or email me your comments and questions at anatheistwitch@gmail.com.